Hey, Adam,
Jeez, why do you think they called bumpers, Gary?
I don't know.
Because they come at the beginning, at the end, like bumpers.
Alex, you're a marketing guy. Do you like that design behind Paul? Does that sweet logo thing look pretty cool to you?
Hey, I forgot to hit the record button.
Yeah, that's really professional, isn't it?
Well, this is a professional podcast.
I met her in a parking lot and was handed two little Yorkies. And the only person I knew that knew Yorkies was Paul. So I called Paul and said, Paul.
Sweet Talk is a weekly 20-minute podcast brought to you by the Continuing Education and Workforce Training Division of Idaho State University's College of Technology. Find us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and SoundCloud and subscribe today. Now it's time to get started with Sweet Talk.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sweet Talk, our weekly podcast here at Idaho State University's Continuing Education and Workforce Training. And I am Paul Dickey, the Video Instruction Manager and Apprenticeship Coordinator here at Sweet. And as always, joining me is my co-host, Angie Wilhelm, our Marketing Director. Angie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. I'm very excited. This is a Friday right before a long weekend. Especially excited today because we have you, Paul, who are over our apprenticeships who do work with contractors. And we also have a very special guest with us. We have Marty Simmons. He is a student, an author, and a retired veteran. He wrote a book called Contractors Exposed that we'll talk about a little bit today. Martin, can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, like I said, I've worked in construction. My father was a brick mason all his life. And I had my first contractor's license in California when I was in the military in 1979. Later on, I became a general contractor in Utah in 1989. So I've been involved with contracting for many years.
So, Marty, so could you give us a little kind of layout of how your career went? What brought you from California to Idaho?
I was raised in Utah, and basically I lived in Utah. It got too crowded, so I came up to God's country in Idaho.
Okay, so how long have you been a contractor in Idaho?
Since 2009.
2009, and then but you retired out of contracting, is that correct?
I closed the business at the age of 69. I'm now pushing 71. I wanted to go back and finish college.
Oh, really? What made you want to finish college? I mean, didn't you think that, hey, I've worked a long fruitful life, and I should be kicking back and relaxing? What made you want to pursue college?
Well, number one, retirement's not for me. Number two, I don't think you're ever too old to learn anything. And though I'm fairly intelligent, I feel that I'm uneducated.
Huh. So what are you taking? What's your program studies at the university?
Marketing and selling with a minor in art.
Oh,
wow.
Really? Now I've got questions. So Marty, one of the reasons why we had you on is because you're an author of a book about Contractors Exposed, exposing bad contractors or knowing how to recognize them. First of all, what made you, write a book, and what do you mean by recognizing bad contractors?
Well, I wrote the book because I've dealt mostly with residential in remodeling and additions, and I have always found a constant stream of bad situations where people end up on the losing end of their jobs. And there's so many things varied. And I saw when it comes out in the newspaper, they cover 3 areas. Are they licensed? Do they have letters of recommendation? Do they have before and after pictures? and those barely scratch the surface. Before and after pictures can be made up. Letters of recommendation could be made up. There's a lot more that goes into having a good contractor. And so I wrote the book. It's principle oriented to help people circumvent a lot of the damage that happens. In fact, if you look on the Bureau of Statistics by the federal government, the number one most mistrusted profession is used car salesman. I think that'll always be number one. But number two is remodeling contractors.
Wow. Wow.
And so I wrote the book because there are some great contractors, but there's a lot that are not. And I feel that it can be changed for the better.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Marty. One thing that I really like about this book is that it was written from the perspective of someone who is and was a contractor for decades. So that holds a lot of value that, it's coming from the perspective of a professional in the field. My question is, this is about Contractors Exposed on how to recognize bad contractors. If you had to give someone one piece of advice on how to recognize a good contractor, what would that be?
Well, I'd say read the book. Unless they want to sit down with me for 3 or 4 hours, that's your best source, because the book is something you can go back and reference. I think the biggest struggle that people have is what makes a good contract. What's the difference between a good and a bad contract? And if I may expound, the difference is how it's written and what's in it.
So are you talking about the actual agreement between the people that need the work and hiring and the contractor itself?
Yes.
I guess that would make a lot of sense, because then you set up the expectations of the job.
Well, what I have found and my experience has been with so many homeowners is I hear this most often. I was told this and I got this. They said they were going to do this and I got that. They said they were going to use these materials or these doors, and that isn't what I got. And they're stuck because of how the contract was written. Many times contracts with remodeling and even new homes or in additions, the contract is vague and general, and it serves the purpose of the contractor and not the purpose of the homeowner. And so what I delve into is that difference and why you need certain things in a contract to protect yourself and to ensure that you get what you're paying for, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no. So does the book have some of this laid out for someone who might want to be able to read it and then come away being able to write a better contract?
Oh, absolutely. There's samples of good and bad contracts and what makes them bad, what makes them good. It goes into detail. Now, I do explain some concepts in a humorous manner. I use short allegories or short stories that help people understand these concepts in a manner that's readily they're able to understand easily. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you put it in layman's terms.
Yes. Contracts, unfortunately, salesmen go out and they get a lot of what I call, they like to give customers a lot of fairy dust, pixel dust. They get them all excited about what the finished product's going to be. And then they go ahead and get them to sign the contract, and the contract doesn't have in it all that they said that they would do.
Okay.
And so what happens is you're at the mercy of, may I use a quick example?
Sure, please.
I did a gentleman's house down in Bennington, Idaho, a few years ago. He had a large outfit. Now, and here's the other thing, because it's a national organization, doesn't make it an organization that comes from the standpoint of integrity. You have to go through the principles that are written in the book to find someone that's integral. He went and had his windows done by a national organization. They charged him about 50% more for a less quality window than what I would have been able to do for him. Now, I was doing all the siding. He had 17 windows. In the course of redoing the siding, I had to take out and reinstall 14 windows because they were installed improperly. And not only he had 2 windows that were so bad that we had to replace them. And so here was a working man. He'd worked hard all his life. He didn't have a lot of money. He put a lot of money into his house and these windows in order to save money on energy. And 4 years later, these windows were only 4 years old. We had to take out and reinstall 14 of them and replace 2 of them.
Wow.
And he was overcome. He said, how did that happen? And how it happened was he didn't have access to this book, which would have sat him down and kept him in what really happens instead of the dream world of getting someone all excited. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So Marty, what I find is a lot of people, myself included, we're not carpenters or construction people by trade. And so when we hire someone, we're kind of like at their mercy because supposedly they're the professional. And I guess this book will help us determine the real professionals, the ones with integrities out there.
It will line it up. I put a little story in there. When I was 13, way back when, I worked for 50 cents an hour. So $35 was a lot of money. I went to the state fair and I was going to win this big stuffed animal at the carnival part of the fair. I ended up losing all my money and not winning that stuffed animal. I kept believing when the guy said, "Oh, you're just there, just one more time and you'll get it." And I never got it. And that's what happens with people in construction. This book helps keep your feet planted on the ground and be able to come from a standpoint of intelligence and principle-oriented knowledge rather than emotion completely.
Okay. So the next thing I like to talk about, Marty, is how'd you write the book? I mean, obviously you wrote the book, but then what do you do to get it published? And how do you sell your book?
Oh, well, I fell, shattered my hip and my leg, my shoulder and my arm.
Oh.
And so I couldn't walk for 6 months. So I decided to write for a small newspaper. It had a total subscription of about 16,000 people. This was in 1998. And they started me off writing once every other week. I called it Around the Town Square. And then it went up to a week and I started getting, people kept asking me questions and I started to answer them. And somebody come up and said, this is a book that's needed. Well, I couldn't work at the time. And so I started writing the book. And about 3 months after I was healed up, I finished the book. I paid for the manuscript to be published. And I sent a manuscript to an organization called the International Platform Association, which was started by Daniel Webster. It's defunct now, but they spoke down in Washington, D.C., and they'd have professional speakers, and then they'd have people that nobody knew. I was one of those that nobody knew. So I spoke after Dave Thomas that started Wendy's, and I was able to talk to him, which was fantastic. And I spoke just before Mrs. Nightingale. Her husband was a great positive thinker and wrote positive books. And I had a standing ovation. I was supposed to speak for half an hour, and they had so many questions that lasted over an hour. They finally stopped them. And they invited me down the next year. And I went down and I had sent a manuscript, and I don't know how Roy Thinnis got it, but Roy Thinnis is an actor. He was the lead actor for Space Invaders in the early 70s.
Oh,
And he flew down and spoke, and had another standing ovation. And then I tried to publish the book on my own. However, this is why I'm at school. I'm fairly intelligent, but I'm not educated on how to market things. And so I didn't market it right. I waited until 2013, and I had saved up a bunch of money. I went with a publisher, got to the cleaners. Nothing happened. And so I put it on the shelf, and I'd more or less forgotten it till I got back to school. And I gave a copy to Shane Hunt and Jack Bradley, who were two of my professors. And both of them said they really liked the book and I should republish it. So I revised it and I've republished it. Jack has helped me get on a website. And so I'm using the marketing that I'm trying to learn here and the different skills, which are very important, by the way. I wish I'd done this many moons ago to help me make the book successful. It's the only book of its kind. There's not another book like it. There are books on how to find a good contractor, but they deal with methodologies. I deal with principles. And so it's written on purpose to be that way. It has 5 stars. It's in 14 different universities around the world as a reference book. So somewhere along the line, it has good value.
so I have a question for you. Marty, have you ever thought about putting this on Amazon as a digital download for people?
I have it on digital download now. I'm just doing it independently because I got scared off. I trusted a publisher before, and I feel that I can reach just about as many people on the internet. And that's why I'm going to go ahead and do a podcast about the book in the future, as I probably could with Amazon. Later on, I'll get it reviewed in New York and pay for it to be put in the New York Times. Those things will come later. But I figure with the marketing skills, and both professors said that I can use them as a coach. And so I think there's enough intelligence and know-how here at ISU. I can do anything with the book.
Right, great. So, and that's kind of how you met us, is you came to our office asking how to do a podcast. Isn't that correct, Marty?
Yes.
But so Marty, if someone was interested in purchasing your book, how would they reach out for that?
Just go on contractors.com. It's just all one word. Contractors Exposed is all one word.com.
Okay, contractorsexposed.com.
And we are actually running out of time here. We only have a couple minutes left on our podcast, so I'm really glad you brought that up, Paul. Is there any other way someone could get a hold of you, Marty, if they had any follow-up questions about your book?
There's a comment section on the website. They can also get a hold of me at my school email, which is simmmmart@isu.edu.
Excellent, excellent.
And
So-
I would love to have people comment, and I would help them any way that I could.
Well, that's
and again, it's contractorsexposed.com. Okay, Paul, you want to wrap us out of here?
Yeah, I'll wrap us out of here. Marty, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate it. When your podcast finally comes out, I think we'd like to have you on again so that we can share that with people.
Well, you're one of my coaches, and so believe me, you'll be involved. And I want to thank you and Angela for taking the time to put the old man on a podcast.
Our pleasure, Marty. Our pleasure. Now, if anyone would like to check out our offerings here at Continuing Education and Workforce Training, you can visit our website at cetrain.isu.edu. You can email us at cetrain@isu.edu, or you can give us a phone call at 208-282-3372. See, Gary's not here, and I am making
I
mistakes,
know.
Angie. I'm making mistakes, Angie.
And I will never be Gary. I'll never
Yeah.
be able to bring his energy.
No. So also, if you like this content, please like, share, subscribe. It helps us reach more people in the community, and we so appreciate that. And thank you very much, everyone, and be safe out there.